Last night was interesting because the students came up with 4 or 5 new questions, and I'm always blown away at the depth of their questions. I always pictured, oh, they're going to give me softballs, right? Because they're 12 to 19 years old. And here are some of the questions they came up with, adding to the 24 questions that we already had. Old Earth or young Earth? What does the Bible teach? And what about dinosaurs? That'll be an interesting one.
That's just one question.
Yeah, one question.
Oh boy.
Spiritual gifts. Are they something that my church should support? And what about this speaking in tongues? It's from a 12-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah. My friend says she's trans. Should I call her by her boy name? He, him?
Wow.
Or should I ignore it? The whole queer agenda is still topmost in their mind. Can I be a Christian and still believe in evolution? Okay, we'll tackle that one too. So anyway, those are just a few that they added on, and we'll be tackling those in the coming weeks, and I'm sure they'll come up with even more.
Exciting.
It'll be fun. Yeah.
And what was the topic that you addressed recently, the most recent?
Recent one was, how can a loving God send people to hell?
Wow.
And I thought, okay, I need to talk about this again to teenagers. And I know there's books and books and books written on this. And so it's a challenge to be able to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down because they certainly aren't dumb, but to kind of simplify it and to make it understandable to them and to make it relational to them in case a friend of theirs, this is all in the context of somebody at school comes up to you and says, hey, hold on a second. You Christians are pretty hard on people. And how could your loving God send somebody to hell? And you think, okay.
And usually there's a very strong traumatic emotion tied to that, whether it is trauma in someone's life or just the very concept of Stephen Fry was famous for saying, I'll never believe in a God who has a creation that has childhood cancer in it.
Exactly.
It just goes straight to the emotion.
Oh, totally.
And not to discount the evil of that. Absolutely.
Right.
So
and the whole problem of evil.
In general. Yeah.
Yeah. How to wrap your head around it as a teenager, right? So I began thinking, how do I tackle this? A loving God sending people to hell. And I'm going to give you an analogy, and like all analogies, it's going to break down somewhere. It's not perfect. But I kind of had to start with the assumption that we're all messed up people, Christians, non-Christians. We're all in the same boat. And I think that's a pretty believable thing that most people will agree to, that you're not really living the life that you really hoped you'd live. Christians call it sin. And non-Christians, I don't know what they call it, but I think most people will admit, yeah, you know what, I kind of fall short a lot of times, and I say things that I shouldn't say, or I do things that I shouldn't do. And, it's called the fallen nature of mankind. It's sin. And so I started thinking of an analogy that I told the kids to think about your being on a train, and that train is cruising along and it's headed towards a cliff. We don't know how soon that cliff is going to be coming up, but it's going to be headed towards a cliff, and it's a humdinger. It's like 1,000-foot cliff, and you're on this train. The analogy I asked them to think about, because most of them have seen Tom Cruise in
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible,
yes,
right.
The train scene.
Absolutely. And I actually looked up that train scene on YouTube, and to my surprise and enjoyment, they entitled it The Train to Hell. And I thought, oh, perfect, perfect. So here you are on this train cruising along, and it's headed towards a cliff, and the train stops, and the doors open up, and Jesus is standing there, and he says, I'm going to offer you to get off. You can get off anytime you want, because this train is headed to a cliff. And most people, some people say, no thanks. And the doors close, and the train continues on, and then it stops again. Doors open up. There's Jesus. I'm going to offer you to get off right now, free of charge. It's grace. I'm offering you a chance to get off this train that is headed towards a cliff. And the kid may look over his shoulder and see that all of his friends are on the train, and they're partying, and they're living life to the fullest, and they're having a fun time. Absolutely, a comfortable train. And they say, no thanks. And let's say the train continues on and it stops again, and This time Jesus is saying, I beg you to get off, because this train is headed towards a cliff. It's headed to hell, and it's a free gift. All you need to do is take my hand. Some people get off, some people don't get off. And those are opportunities in a person's life where they are presented with the gospel. They're presented with the offer of Jesus Christ to have them get off the train. So we're all on the train. Some of us get off, some of us don't. So it's not necessarily God sending us to hell. We're headed there already. And God, far from sending us to hell, he's offering us a free gift to get off the train and to avoid that eventual cliff that we're all headed towards. And most kids got it, other than chastising me and giving me a bad time because I spoiled the movie for them, for those who had not seen it.
Well, did they really think Tom Cruise was going to die in this Mission Impossible?
Did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I told them, okay, you know what? Tom Cruise doesn't die. And they all screamed. They said, no. And I said, what do you think? Tom Cruise is going to die? Are you kidding me? Anyway, we had fun with that in a way to answer a really heavy question for teenagers about how could a loving God send us to hell? And the short answer is, he doesn't. We're headed there anyway.
This is very similar to what R.C. Sproul talks about in Legionnaire Ministries. He says, so many people are hyperfixated on the evil of this world, and they don't realize that it's not evil. This is normal. This is the baseline. We're all defaulting to going to hell.
Right.
And instead of focusing on that and shaking our tiny little angry fists at God saying, how dare you send all these people to hell? Instead, we should be raising our hands saying, thank you so much for sparing me to get off this train.
Right. Right.
So this question is specifically, why could a loving God send people to hell? But the problem of evil is almost a step back from that, because that's looking down the road. That's assuming the train is going to fall off the cliff, and not a lot of people know that they can look out the window and see where the train is going. They're in their own little comfortable world on this proverbial train, but there's still evil going on this train.
Yeah.
And if the train conductor claims that this is his train and he's worked so hard, how come there's food poisoning everywhere, or how come there's so much evil going on the train itself?
Yeah.
So how would you explain these small little pieces of evil? We're not talking about hell down the road. We're talking about how could I be abused as a child? I was innocent. How could I deserve this?
Right.
Where was God then?
Yeah. Yeah. That's another week. That's another question. That's another week. Because my lessons I try to keep them between 10 and 15 minutes is all.
Okay.
And there is another question that they ask, why is there so much evil in the world?
Right.
And it's kind of a subset to another question that I attempted to answer is, it was especially just after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Why did Charlie have to die? And that was just a heavy, heavy week that we went through. So there are a lot of subsets to that question of evil, and why is there so much evil in the world, and how could God allow somebody to come in with a gun and shoot up a lot of kids in school? These horrendous acts, and trying to balance that with our faith and with the omniscience of a loving God, and could he have stopped that, and why didn't he stop it? These are really, really heavy questions. Back to the train, I failed to mention those stops along the way. You don't know when the stops are going to stop.
Oh.
And those stops along the way are your day of death.
You mean you don't know when that train is going to end, where that cliff is, nor do you know where the stops are.
Right. You don't know where the cliff is, and you don't know whether the last denial that you said no thanks to Jesus, that might be your last door opening. The door may not open again. You could die tomorrow, basically.
Right. That's hard when you're in a very comfortable, relatively safe culture and society. I'll make that decision when I have kids, or I have a career, maybe when I retire, because my grandma is the quintessential Christian, and maybe I'll be like her once I choose to be more selfless. Yeah. But your point is, it's time now. Oh, absolutely. As Arnold Schwarzenegger says,
do it now. As the Bible says, now is the day of salvation. But it's, especially when you're 15. You don't think you're going to die tomorrow.
Right.
You're invincible.
Mm.
I'll think about my faith and my eternal destiny when I'm 60.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I'm going to live a long time.
Yeah.
Really? You don't know.
Trust the people who already got off the train. Do you know what they're doing? Well, at that train stop, they're you and me. We're getting back on the train saying, guys, this train stop, it's real.
Exactly.
Believe us.
Yeah.
Just try to step off and you will see. Like, well, I don't know. I've been burned by too many people saying to get off, and it was a bad train stop, and I got my feelings hurt. And
Oh, yeah.
you're just being phobic. You're just being hate-filled towards my comfortable train.
Yeah.
No, we've gotten off. It's true.
Yeah. And the reason for getting off the train is not necessarily to avoid hell, but as you say, you look at the people who have gotten off that train and you think they are living lives of joy and peace and tranquility in a world that is messed up.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the avoidance of evil or the avoidance of the consequence of sin. It is, there is joy and peace being offered to you.
Right.
Free gift.
Right.
Take it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, looking ahead to next week, what are some other questions that you're going to be tackling?
Oh, my goodness. Let me see here. The LGBTQ movement, we're going to tackle again because there are more questions, kind of subset questions. We're going to talk about the how to pray in confidence. And what about unanswered prayer? I've been praying for something for a long time and God's not answering my prayer. That's going to be a good one. Another kind of a controversial one that we did tackle is, can Catholics go to heaven?
Oh,
that is a fantastic one.
That's interesting considering your background.
Hey, I was a Catholic for the first 18 years of my life. I was an altar boy for 3 years. I know the Catholic faith very well.
I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be a good one. That'll be a great one to tackle. And I want to make these kids soldiers for Christ. I don't want to make them obnoxious people that nobody wants to talk to. So I'm going to land on some of these questions with as much love as I can and understanding, especially with their friends at school, and be able to give a good, sound reason for their faith.
And none of these answers that you're giving them is just, well, just put your head in the sand and just ignore it.
No.
Faith is just an excuse to be lazy and ignorant.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
This is a thinking faith. You can use logic. You can use archaeology and historicity and philosophy.
Yeah.
God is surprisingly logical.
Absolutely.
Up to a point where, for my personal journey of faith, I got like 99% there, going to school to study theology and getting my degrees in that. But I found that I could never get to that 100%. Like, for example, the Trinity. All right, let's explain the Trinity. Everything else is logical about God, but that facet I don't understand. How can you say that there's three persons in one entity? That makes no sense. And you get 99% there to explaining it. And then that last 1%, it's almost like he purposefully conceals himself.
Absolutely.
And he's like, okay, I've got you to the point where you have to trust based off of faith.
Bingo.
It's like he purposefully places us there where we have to take that last step.
Yep.
It's like, but God, everything else was logical. Why can't it all be? He's like, well, because then there would be no faith involved. You would just be this little robot where I plug in my formula and I believe in you, God. I love you. You don't love me. I'm
exactly. We're commanded in Scripture not to understand, but to believe.
Ooh, that flies on the heels of this culture because the ultimate in affirming someone else is to say the words, I understand.
Yeah.
If you disagree with someone, seek to understand. Yeah. Not, I understand you and I disagree with you. They assume that if you understand their position, you have empathy, and therefore you will no longer be in disagreement with them because understanding is like the idol of this world. Yeah. But you're saying that God doesn't ask us to
understand. When Jesus rose from the dead and Thomas wasn't around, I don't know what he was doing, but he came later and he said, I'm not gonna believe that he rose from the dead until I see him. Stick my hand in the hole in his side. And when he did, he looked at Jesus and said, my Lord and my God. And Jesus said, you are blessed, Thomas, because you believe. not because you understand what's going on here. That's all that
Wow.
Jesus wants. He wants you
Yeah.
to believe him.
He wants that last 1%.
That's
Just
it.
take that jump. Everything else makes somewhat logical sense. And all the other alternatives of staying on the proverbial train makes 1,000 times less sense
It
if you were to
does.
compare the
It
alternatives
does.
out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're not using that as an excuse to discount some of these questions, just shrug and say, just believe, because there is some logic, there is some explanation in it.
Yep.
But my point is, once you have to get to a point where you have to take a dump or get off the pot.
Yeah.
You have to commit. You
Yep.
just can't sit there making your legs numb on your phone.
Right.
You have to flush and get off and make a commitment.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll use it with the youth because I would just lose the entire Bible study right there. They say, hey, you made a potty analogy. I'm going to tell my mom. But yeah, it is interesting. The point you make about understanding and that being the mantra of our society right now, in a way, and this is what we talked about last night, and we'll talk about it on another episode about the Trinity, is that people will sometimes look at you and say, well, number one, the word Trinity is not in the Bible. That's true. And I don't understand it, so it must not be true.
Oh.
And you think about what you just said. You're saying that since you fully can't understand the God of the universe, the God who created the stars in the heavens, that, I don't understand that, so I'm not going to believe it. His ways are so far from our ways. He is so awesome that we really think we little gnats down here on earth are going to fully understand the nature of our God. Anyway,
we can barely understand the things in our physical seeing world, and
totally.
yet we still don't deny their existence.
Absolutely.
Like gravity,
Yeah.
multiple universes throughout space, time, continue to talk about quantum physics, and yet we shrug and say, well, well, it's real.
Yeah.
Really? Do you fully understand it? No. But I see the evidence of it.
That's a great point.
That's what faith is. It's evidence of things that we cannot see.
Exactly.
It's that's why it kind of bothers me when people say, well, you have a blind faith. There's no such thing as a blind faith, because in order to have faith, you need to acknowledge something with your eyes. You need to observe evidence of something. I'm sitting in a chair. I've observed other people sitting in it.
Exactly.
Who am I to, well, I got to analyze this first before I sit down. No, I'm going to use my observations. Someone else sat in it. I'm not blind.
Right.
And then I'm going to trust the chair.
Yeah.
So there's really no such thing as blind faith.
Right.
You need to observe evidence.
Exactly. Josh McDowell is famous in saying, in order to believe in the Christian faith, it takes faith. Faith, yes. Credulity, no. Credulity means the undue readiness of belief. We have a thinking faith. We have a historical faith that a lot of things can be proven. A lot of things can have amazing amount of evidence towards them. So yes, we have a thinking person's faith that we don't need to just check our brains at the door.